everyone. It's great to have you with us today for our webinar on moving to France and buying French property. My name's Karen Tate. I'll be your host for the next hour. For the past 20 or so years, I've been editing French Property News magazine, and I also contribute to titles such as the Sunday Times in my role as a freelance journalist. So I'm joined today by four of our panelists. Unfortunately, Sharon, who was going to be talking to you about mortgages, is unable to attend tonight, but her details are on the screen if you want to contact her for anything. So before we get on to the questions, I'll just pass over to the panelists and they can introduce themselves. So Joanna.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Joanna Leggett. I'm one of the directors at Leggett. I'm one of the Leggett family. Leggett's been established since 1998, so we're very well known in France. We've got agents all over the country. We cover all areas of France, from the Alps to Brittany to Normandy to the southwest of France. So we can help you. We offer a hand-holding service from start to finish, from finding your property and helping you to move through that process. So looking forward to your questions tonight. Thanks, Karen.
Sorry, thanks, Joanna. And Tracy?
Hi, everybody. My name is Tracy Leonetti. I'm a relocation expert. I'm based in the south of France for the past 30 years. The role of LBS is to help people like yourselves who are moving, living, or creating a business in France. And tonight I'm here to answer as many questions as I can, of course, on visas and paperwork. I look forward to answering those for you.
Lovely, thanks Tracy. And Paulette?
Hi everybody, my name is Paulette Booth. I'm the co-founder and director of Agence AXA International. We're a dedicated English-speaking agency covering the whole of France. I also manage our broker side of the agency, which is L'Onomy, which is a specialised broker service for visa health insurance. So we can help you right from your move to France for your visa, right through to insuring your property, your cars and everything. Every insurance need, we can do that for you. And I look forward to answering all of your questions.
That's great, thanks Paulette. And Jonathan?
Hi there, good evening everyone. Hello to the panelists, hello to the audience. So my name's Jonathan. I'm a senior trader here at Lumon. Who is Lumon? Well, we're an international payment provider. We've got real expertise in the foreign property market. I've been at Lumon for 16 of our 26 years of trading, and last year we turned over £8 billion worth of currency. So we're looking after clients moving money in and out of France for a property transaction from all over the world. I've got a real interest in France. I love going there on holidays, lots of beautiful places to visit, but I'm also very interested in the currency markets and what can move exchange rates. Now, one of the things you like to do in these webinars is actually to find out a little bit more about you, our audience. So I'm just going to launch a poll just relating to when you might be starting to look at property over there. As I'm sure you'll be aware, buying an overseas property doesn't happen overnight, and it's just quite helpful for us to get a bit of information on the timescales that you're working towards at the moment. Of course, the start of a new year, a really good time to be making those plans and looking at what's going to be happening. We say typically from sort of start to finish, you're looking at a good 3 months with a French property purchase, but it can take longer in some cases depending on what's happening there. So lots of people looking for the early part of this year. Thank you very much. I'm just going to launch another poll now, just in terms of the financial side of things, when you might be looking ready to put forward an offer. As we just mentioned, buying a property doesn't happen overnight. So where the currency comes in, because exchange rates can change literally by the second, almost every day at the moment, with some things going on in the world, understanding where and when you might be in the process can be quite helpful from a finance point of view, because there are many different things you can do to actually manage your exchange rate, to fix exchange rates in advance, or to help ultimately understand your costs. So thank you very much, everyone who's answered that poll. And then my final poll, a bit more about you and where you're joining us from. The actual buying process in France, exactly the same wherever you're buying from in the world, but there can be slight nuances depending on where you're from, certainly relating to currency, of course, perhaps banking and other factors. So it looks like a lot of people from the UK, but also lots of friends joining us from America and also some within Europe. So I'm sure we'll be covering all of that and more today. So thank you very much, everyone, for answering those polls, and I'll pass back to Karen.
Thanks, Jonathan, and well done. Jonathan's not feeling so well tonight, so he's doing very well to have joined us. So let's get started on the questions. One for Joanna. Josephine Pike is looking for tips on the buying process, so perhaps you could give her your 3 main tips.
Yeah, would you like me to take you through the buying process? Would that be sort of simpler?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very straightforward in France. It's a lot simpler than it is if you're coming from the UK, for example. Basically, when you find a property that you like and you put an offer in and the offer is accepted from the vendor, then the compromis de vente is drawn up straight away. Now, the compromis de vente is like an exchange of contracts, as it would be if you were coming from the UK. So before that can be done, the diagnostic reports have to be done, which the vendor pays for. So this is like a kind of a survey, but it's not a survey as we know it in other countries. So it would be an electrical report, a phos report, lead paint test, etc. And there's 5 different tests that are done. Once you've seen those tests, then the compromis can be signed. The buyer always signs the compromis first, and then the vendor signs the compromis. The buyer has a 10-day cooling off period. So if within that 10 days you decided you change your mind or circumstances changes or whatever, you can withdraw from that contract within 10 days with no charge. The vendor, however, the seller, once they've signed the contract, they can't pull out from the sale until it completes. After the 10-day cooling off period, you'd need to send your 10% deposit for the property to the notaire. The notaire has a client's holding account, and that deposit will be held until the sale completes. So once the deposit is in and the compromis been signed, there's about 2 to 3 months where all the searches are done on the property, the land registry, everything's checked to see there's nothing going to be built that could affect the value of the property or anything like that. If you put suspensive clauses in, so say for example you wanted to change a barn to habitation because you want to make more accommodation, that would have been put into the compromis de vente, and the planning, the outline planning for that would have to be accepted because it's a suspensive clause. The same if you wanted, for example, you're getting a mortgage or you want to put a swimming pool in, all of those suspensive clauses have to be met before you can complete. And the final act is drawn up. If any of the suspensive clauses are not met, so say for example the swimming pool has been refused, you have a choice to withdraw from the contract and get your 10% deposit back, or you can continue and go without a pool, for example. It's very rare that they refuse pools unless you're next to a historic building or a church, for example. So then after the 3 months, all the clauses are met. Then it comes to the signing. Usually the buyer and the seller both meet in the notaire's office and everybody signs together. But if you're traveling from quite some distance and you're not getting a mortgage on the property, you can sign by proxy. So the notaire can sign on your behalf, and that's drawn up before the final completion. So it's a really straightforward sale from start to finish and usually takes around about 3 months. I hope that answers all the questions. Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Joanna. So I've got a question for Tracy now from Sherilyn Baylor in the USA. She wants to know, how long does it take to acquire a retirement visa once the paperwork has started? And a similar question from Andrew Oakley, who is retired and has sold his UK property. He wants to know, do I need to start looking into visa requirements sooner rather than later?
Yeah, sure. 2 really good questions. So our first one, how long does it take? So a retirement visa, or any visa you're applying for, will take a minimum of 3 months. And that's not 3 months to get the visa through, but 3 months for the process, because of course any visa process, much like Johnny was saying, the process for the buy-in, there is a kind of a 5-step process. There's the application made online, there's getting an appointment, which is a different website where you make the appointment from. Then you go to the appointment and hand over all your documents, and that's when you wait for your visa. So the waiting time, once you've handed over the documentation, If it's a retirement visa, you're talking possibly 3 weeks, maybe 4 maximum, depending on what time of year you apply and if there's any backlogs at the TLS centre. If it's a business visa, you're talking more 5 to 6 weeks. So hopefully in a time perspective, that's okay, that once the paperwork is started. But I used to say count 3 months for a visa minimum. And for the other chappie who's thinking about moving with a visa, when should he start again? It's definitely 3 months now. If you've sold your property and you're waiting, you know, there's nothing to stop you starting straight away. I always say work backwards. So think about, when do you want to move to France, and then work backwards on the timing. So knowing that once you've put your paperwork in, it's going to take at least 4 weeks. So yeah, and of course that works well with the buying process as well, usually about 3 months. So generally speaking, yes, start the process 3 months beforehand. And if you're working with people like us, then reach out a bit before that, because of course we want to make sure that you've got all your paperwork in order. Hope that helps.
Lovely, thanks Tracy. And I guess it's never too early to start thinking about it and just to do a little research and have a good understanding of the basic type of visa you'll need before you approach Tracy to discuss all the details.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Say, you know, preparation is the name of the game, and people start working on their relocation sometimes over a year before they're moving to France. Absolutely. So yeah,
Better to be prepared. Okay then, so Jonathan, we've got a currency question here. I'm still trying to open a French bank account. Is it possible to buy my euros even if I don't have a French or euro bank account set up?
Yes, absolutely. It's quite a common question, because people agree to buy the property and things are moving forward and think, how am I going to transfer the money? I don't have a French bank account. So we, by the way, have some partners we work with to help you set up a French bank in the first instance, which you will ultimately typically need to do for utilities and things like that. So certainly speak to me about that. But actually, you don't need a French bank account to buy the property. With Lumon, first step is registration, very easy to set up an account, totally free of charge, and then you get instant access. We call it a wallet, but it's a euro bank account, and it's what's called a client account. In America, they'll refer to them as escrow accounts, very much like a solicitor, notary, others who sort of hold money on behalf of their clients for whatever purpose it might be, wealth managers, pension managers, etc., etc. So essentially, you register with Lumon, you get instant access to this euro account that you can then use to make payments to the notaire. And actually, most clients will find it much easier to use this euro account to pay the notaire. You know, we work with all of the notaries that Leggett are dealing with. I think by count, many hundreds every year of different notaires that we're sending money to or receiving money from. So we know all their details. They know Lumon. There's no additional fees, costs, or charges there. And so it's just a much sort of simpler process using this euro wallet. So it's a real advantage. Sometimes people look at us and think, oh, the main thing is the currency rate. And of course, that's very important. But actually, ultimately, we're a payment provider, and it's these important payments for the purchase that we can help with. You can also use this wallet to purchase euros and hold them here, just like if you had your own bank account. So quite a good start to the year for pound euro levels, and the dollar has gained as well a little bit on the euro at times. So we've actually had some clients, very recently we had a 4-month high for the pound against the euro. So good start to the year for British buyers. So some people we've got, they may not actually be completing until February, March, maybe even later in the year, but they've been buying their euros, they're holding them in the wallet, and then when Joe, any of our team asks for the money to pay for the property, we just send it straight to the notaire for them. So yeah, you've got this wallet here instantly. You can use it instead of a French bank account. You will ultimately want to open a French bank account, and we can help you with that. But as I say, in the early times, the euro wallet we can offer is much more helpful.
Great, thanks Jonathan. I'm sure that's good to hear. An insurance question now for Paulette. A lot of people are worried about healthcare and insurance, and this question is, what health insurance will I require to live in France permanently? So not travel in health insurance, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. If we start with your move to France, it's really, really important to make sure you've got the proper insurance to accompany a visa application. A lot of people think, oh, a travel insurance, yeah, I can get an annual travel insurance. It's absolutely not the same thing. To accompany your visa application, you need to have cover for at least 30,000 euros medical cover, emergency repatriation, and cover for the whole of your stay for that first year. Now, an annual travel insurance will be, yes, it's annual, but it's usually for a trip of maximum 30 days, 60 days if you're lucky. It doesn't cover the whole year. So first of all, that's going to be rejected when you apply for your visa. So through Lonomy, we offer proper visa health insurance. Something to add is if you have an S1, if you're a UK customer or from another EU country, you may have an S1, and that's giving you reciprocal rights for healthcare in France. That's paid by your country of origin. If you've got that, you don't need a visa health insurance. That's the medical insurance for the visa application. When you get to France, once you've been here, depending on your circumstances, you can either apply for a social security number straight away, or you may need to wait 3 months. Generally, people have to wait 3 months, and that's something that Tracy can advise you on and take you through that application for your social security number as well. Once you've got your social security number, you can apply it 3 months, say, but you're not going to get it at 3 months. You're probably not going to get it at 6 months either. You're probably looking, Tracy smiling, quite a few months later. It can take up to a year, it can take longer, it can take quite a while. So it's important that you've got that really, really good cover in place, because if you're hospitalised, you have an accident. I'll give you an example. We had a client who moved over, and on day 2, she got hit by a car on a zebra crossing, on a pedestrian crossing. She had the right to have applied for a social security straight away, a number straight away. She just arrived, it was day 2, she hadn't done that. But she'd taken a cover as well to accompany her S1 just for accident and emergency, and it covered all of her medical bills in hospital. So it's really important that you have that cover in place. Once you've got your social security number, you'd then swap over to what's called a mutual top-up. And I think I'll cover mutual top-up a little bit later, because I could be here for 3 hours actually to explain the healthcare system in France. But just to give you kind of that an introduction of make sure you've got the right cover when you arrive, and don't get your visa rejected. And if you're doing your visa application through Tracy, she'll check that you've got the right cover in place as well, so it won't be rejected. But also, as Tracy was saying, you know, the application for your visa can take a few weeks. Just bear in mind, if you want pre-existing medical conditions to be covered, if you're of over a certain age, your application for your visa health insurance might take a few weeks, depending on, you know, what you want covered, what your medical background is. So don't apply for it and say, oh, I've got my appointment for my visa tomorrow, can you do me a policy? Yes, 9 times out of 10 we can do a policy, you're covered. But sometimes and often it's not. So just plan in advance, like Tracy said. Take your time beforehand, you know, do your medical questionnaires. They may not be needed, but if they are, at least plan and take your time to get covered. The good news about applying for the French social security, there's no medical questionnaire. Once you've been here for 3 months, you've got the right to apply. No medical questionnaire required for that. So I hope, yeah, I could spend hours talking about it, but that's a very brief insight.
So that was a good overview. Thanks, Paulette. So let's have a look at buying property. For Joanna, Alex Coppen wants to know how much information is provided by an agent or vendor prior to signing the compromis de vente, which is the first sales contract, the legally binding sales contract.
Well, everything is provided. You know, any questions can be answered. We have the previous deeds for the property that can be looked at. We have the cadastral plan so that you can see exactly where the property sits within its own land and its numbers that it has. We have all the tests done, so we know if there's any problems with the electric, if there's lead paint anywhere. We'll know whether if it's a septic tank, because it's obviously in the countryside and not on main drains. We know whether that conforms or not. The searches will know if it's in a red zone, which means if it's a flood zone or it's not a flood zone, if it's near a river. All of those sorts of things we will know in advance. There's things that, you know, that we possibly, if you're looking at buying the furniture, or there's things like that that we might need to negotiate with the buyer, with the seller, sorry. So there's all sorts of things like that. But realistically, everything it's very, very transparent in France, and everything is covered with the notaire, with the agent before the purchase. Now, obviously, if you're buying without an agent and you're buying privately, then I would suggest that you possibly use either go and see your notaire and get all the questions in advance that you need to know, or use a lawyer. I mean, you don't need to use a lawyer in France if you're going through an agent, because agents are fully licensed and registered. It's a totally, you know, it's a profession, and we're guided by a lot of laws. So we cover everything. But if you are buying privately, then I would suggest perhaps using a lawyer, or going to see the notaire when you found the property that you like.
Lovely, thanks, Joanna. And then also, of course, there's like 3 or 4 months after signing that contract before completion, and during that period, the notaire will check other things that you might not be aware of.
Yeah, I mean, the notaire might find out that there is a succession, or there's something that the vendor hasn't told us, but the notaire will know everything. You know, if there was a motorway going to be planned 10 kilometres up the road and we don't know about that, the notaire will know about that. So all of those sort of land searches and everything will all be done way before the signing. So if anything comes up at all, then you have the choice to withdraw if necessary.
Great, lovely. Okay, let's have another question for Tracy now. Carol Raubenheimer in the USA asks if you could explain the language requirements for over 65. So I presume that that applies to relocating to France.
Yes, so there's been a lot in the news just recently about the language requirements for visas to move into France. They are getting stricter on the language requirements. And certainly when it comes to multi-annual residency cards, there is a language test. So anybody who's applying for business visas, there always was a test for business visas anyway. So a multi-annual liberal visa will be a language test. For citizenship files, there are a language test. They've gone a higher level since the 1st of January, and there's also a civic test that has been put into place as well. The good news is for over 65-year-olds, there is no language test for the multi-annual residency card, and there's no language test for the EU permanent card, the permanent card that you can get for 10 years. There, however, is a language test for citizenship. So there used to be an exemption for over 65-year-olds for the citizenship files, but there isn't anymore. So when it comes to residency and visas for over 65, no language test. But if you want to go for citizenship, there will be a language level test, whatever your age is, and it's B2 level. So good news for the residency for over 65, not so good news for citizenship.
But that's good to know, the distinction that it is different between the residency and applying for citizenship, which you can obviously, you can apply to be resident in France and to live in France. You don't have to go to take your nationality test.
No, you don't. Yeah, nationality is obviously a bigger process, takes a lot longer, and I certainly wouldn't advise anybody to go down the citizenship path without having consulted, because you know there is a lot of kind of hoops to jump through, huge amount of documentation and the language test, and of course, you know, it's a bit like doing a candidate show. It has to be a good file to go through. So yeah, it's something, it's very, very different, and people do get confused between residency and citizenship. Residency being a residency card and does not give you the ability to move around in Europe, but citizenship does.
Great. Okay. Yes. Oh no, Spec. So that's good, because we just had a question come in about currency, so it's good that Jonathan's back. The question is, I've just accepted an offer selling my property in the UK. How can I best use a forward contract to maximise my budget?
Okay, well, congratulations on selling the UK property. That's going to put you in a really strong position with the move to France. For anyone unaware, a forward contract is a type of currency contract that Lumen can offer and you get in the foreign exchange market, and it essentially allows you to buy your currency now, but you don't have to pay for it all now. So it's very similar to a sort of buy now, pay later deal that you might get with a kitchen or a sofa or something. There is something to pay now. You'll pay 5% deposit. Sometimes it's a larger deposit if it's a strange, well, more exotic currency, I should say. The South African rand, for example, is quite a volatile currency, so sometimes we ask for a greater deposit with that. But sterling euro, dollar euro, you're typically talking 5%. So it's perfect where you're selling a property in the UK, or you've got perhaps assets tied up, stock market, for example, investment funds. You might have your money working for you, but you might also have a commitment to purchase the property. So let me give you a scenario. You might agree a purchase today in France, say for April, 3 months from now. You've got a property sale in the UK going through, or the US, wherever it might be, but you're not going to get that money until March. Well, that's a problem potentially, because who knows what the exchange rates are going to do in that time. Obviously, with the property, we're normally talking large 6, sometimes 7-figure sums, but even on a 5-figure sum, a few cents here or there, it can be hundreds, if not thousands in difference. So you can use a forward contract to fix a rate. Just going back to that example, even though you're not going to get the money until March, you could lock in the rate today so that you know once you get that money in March, and again, it might not just be from a property sale, it might be money in the stock market or money in a bond or something, but you just want to fix that rate in advance. So the main advantage of it is really that peace of mind and certainty of understanding your costs, so that you know what you're going to be paying once you get to the completion over in France. You're not going to get any nasty surprises. You can also use it as part of a strategy. So some clients, you know, a reaction would be, well, why would I fix my rate now? I think the rates are going to get much better, or at least I want to give myself the chance that the rates are going to get better. Well, that's absolutely fine. We'll always have a detailed consultation with the client. There's lots of different ways to actually structure the currency transaction for a property purchase. So that's just one tool. You might do a forward contract on 25% of the purchase price, or 50 or 75, according to your needs. Everyone's slightly different, so it's really important to have that conversation. But yes, you can use the forward contract to fix the rate. So when you do sell that property in the UK, you know what it's going to be worth, and then you can go house hunting in France with full confidence.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. So we have an insurance question here for Paulette. If I take my British registered car to France, will I be able to get French motor insurance? And do they have to have French motor insurance? Can you use UK motor insurance, I guess?
I suppose the short answer is, can I get car insurance in France? The short answer is yes. However, not all French insurers will offer this insurance for foreign plated cars. There's generally, when you've got a car, it's expected that that car is going to be registered in where it's parked overnight, so like the overnight parked address, and that's because of the third party liability. There are some insurers in France that will offer it. There's not many. The problem can be more, I've seen it more with brokers, that they will offer, say for example, AXA won't cover a foreign plated car. I'll give you a workaround, that's very easy. But I have seen some clients who've said, oh yes, I've got an AXA insurance policy through a broker. It's not valid. So they're paying for a policy that's not valid. So you've got to be really, really careful that you do speak to an expert that knows, not just can issue a policy. Anyone can press a button to say the policy is issued, but it's knowing that that policy is valid in the background. A really, really good workaround. Instead of, I mean, you'd be hours on the internet searching, you know, is this company, it's under a system called Libre Prestation de Service, and you've got to find an insurance company that's in that subscribes to that. So instead of spending hours on the internet, because you're already going to spend hours getting your documents ready to import the car to France, Tracy can also validate that and can do the import for you too. What you can do is, you've got a month when you come over with that car. you've just moved to France, you've got lots of things to do. You're not going to go, I put everything on hold, I'm just going to get my car registration sorted. If you put your car into temporary WW plates, you've got 4 months to get all of those documents together. You know, you've got to get clear customs, you've got to get the document for tax, you've got to get what's called a COC, certificate of conformity. Not always, but quite a lot of the time. That can take 2 to 4 weeks to come. And that's ticking on your first month in France when you're trying to move house and settle in and everything. So the temporary WW French plates just means your car's registered in France, and you can then you can be insured, and there's no problem at all. I would just like to add on, for if you're bringing your car over from the UK, it's going to be a right-hand drive. Yes, we can insure it. There's no problem at all. You will be insured. But say, for example, you're involved in a pretty bad accident and the car's an insurance write-off. You're not going to get the same value for that car as it would be if it was a left-hand drive car. Because if that was sold on the open market, not many people want to buy a right-hand drive car in France. So if you look for how much is that car worth compared to this exactly same model that's a left-hand drive, it's going to be worth, you know, 1,000 or so less, because nobody wants to buy a right-hand drive car unless people are moving back to the UK. There is a little bit of a market for that, of buying a right-hand drive in France to go back to the UK in. So just bear in mind, yes, you will get a payout if that car is a write-off, but it's not going to be the same value as the left-hand equivalent. It can be quite expensive to buy a left-hand car. You know, I'd say the value of cars in France, you know, you'll look at it and think, oh, that's worth, you know, I can get, say, a Toyota Yaris for about 1,000 less in the UK as a right-hand drive. But cars in France tend to hold their value really, really well. Second-hand cars have got that really good value. So yes, you might have a bit of an expense to buy that car to be a left-hand drive, but it's going to hold its value more than your right-hand drive car is. And also, when you go through the péage on the motorways, you're sitting on the right side of the car to get the ticket. Going around bends on those hairy country lanes, you know, you're on the right, you can see the oncoming traffic, you're not, you know, over that side. So I don't know, is there an advantage bringing your car with you to France? People can be quite attached to the car, but quite quickly you kind of adjust to living in France, and you I don't know, for me, I would always recommend buy a left-hand drive car. But if you don't and you want to bring your car, yes, it can be insured, don't worry.
Thanks, Paulette. That's really interesting. It hadn't occurred to me that you might not get as much money back on a claim. You know, it all makes sense, but I just hadn't thought of that. Clearly, there's a lot to think about, and if anyone is considering bringing British registered cars over, as Paulette says, really consider whether it's worthwhile. I guess classic cars and things like that you might feel different about, but that's probably a whole different kettle of fish for insurance.
Costs a lot to register as well, so think of, it might be cheaper to have a car in the UK, but it costs an absolute fortune to register a UK car in France, because you have to go all through the process, and sometimes now they're sending lots of UK cars through the dream process, and I kid you not, it is a nightmare.
So it's a false economy.
Yeah, so Paulette's advice is very, very valid.
Great. Okay, that's a lot to think about, a lot for people to take in. Good to know. Okay, so we've got a buying question here for Joanna. Matt Payne asks, in French property purchases, is it common to make an offer conditional on selling a main UK residence? So saying, well, you know, the sale
subject to the sale.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's 99% not accepted by the vendor, because in France, you've got no control over what's happening in the UK. Anything can change. If it was France to France, like if it was UK to UK, there is the possibility. We have had situations where the vendor has not been in a hurry, the seller has not been in a hurry to sell. They've had a look at the property that the buyer is selling in the UK. They've seen its good value, they've seen this, and they're willing to wait. But generally speaking, you can't make a contract subject to a sale of a property in any country other than in France. So generally speaking, no, but if you've got a very good vendor and they're happy to put that in the compromis de vente to say that they're waiting, but even then, you'd still have to have a date. So, you know, if it's going to be up to a year, or it's going to be up to a year and a half, or it's going to be up to 6 months, you still would have to have a date in. So it's a little bit risky. And I would always say that, you know, particularly if it's a really nice house that you're going for, there may be 1 or 2 buyers after it. I would get your house sold, or at least get your house under offer in whichever country you're in, if it's in the UK, because you've got much more negotiating power and much more, you know, my house is sold. You know, I can get my house is, you know, it's going to be going through. If you haven't sold and somebody comes in who has sold, they're much more likely to accept that offer than yours. So you have, you know, I would suggest get your house sold, or at least under offer and signed, or contract signed or something, before you go shopping. Because the worst thing is losing, you know, going and you haven't sold your house in the UK and you lose your dream home because somebody else puts in an offer in that's ready to buy. So it can be done, but it's not usual.
Yeah, I was just going to say exactly that. How awful would it be if you did find your absolute dream house, you lost it because you hadn't sold in the UK? And you can completely understand the vendor's point of view. Why would they agree when it could take ages for the house to sell? You may, of course, find a vendor whose property's been on the market for a very long time is willing, but
and exactly, sometimes it's inheritance, yeah, and you know, there's nobody living in it, so they're happy to all wait. You know, there is those situations when that does happen, but obviously in France, a client could get a bridging loan against their house, but you can't get a bridging loan from the UK to France. So yeah, that's why it would work in France, but it doesn't work from country to country.
Yeah, of course, that's, yeah, interesting. Okay, so a question for Tracy now. Rebecca Jarman wants to know about working in France. She asks, how straightforward is it to set up your own business? And I guess that's how long is a piece of string question.
Yeah, how straightforward is it to set up your own business? So not visa, so I'm assuming you've got your business visa, so that is organized. You come to France, you validate your business visa, and then you want to set up a business. It depends what type of business you want to set up, what type of activity you are in, of course. So that would be my first question to you. And I'd like to say it's easy, but it actually, you know, the smallest type of business is a micro-entreprise, which, you know, if you've done a bit of research, you'll have read about micro-entreprise, auto-entrepreneur, which is the smallest type of activity in France. It is a good low-risk way to start a small business activity, consultancy type of activity, anything really, if your earnings are not going to be anything over, you know, kind of 50,000, 60,000 euros a year. The problem you have now with even setting up a micro-entreprise, it's managed by the INPI website, INPI, which is a bit of a nightmare of a website to work with, very time consuming and not the most user friendly, all in French, of course. And also, when you're working with the INPI website for any modifications, so let's change your business address, or you change something, your activity, you have to have a French ID card to be able to do that. So unfortunately, setting up a business, small business activity is not as easy as it used to be. And then, of course, if you want to set up a limited company, so a SAL or even a SAS, then that would be more with an accountant, and it can take anything from 3 to 6 weeks to set that up. So I would suggest the easiest activity setup would be a small micro-entreprise. Of course, that's the type of things that we do for our clients. And unfortunately, it's not as easy as it used to be because of the online system that they're currently using. So yeah, sorry to be the bearer of not so good news on the whole business, because then you have to deal with AirSAF and the CFE and things like that. So you have to set separate accounts with the AirSAF. And oh, my cat's going to come and pay a visit now. Sorry about this.
We don't mind visits from cats.
He had me talking about INPI, you know, it gets me upset, so he came to give me a bit of a hug. Anyway, if you are in France, if you've got your business fee, you need some support with that, do reach out. If you've got a question, of course, I'll be happy to answer that for you.
Yeah, and as you rightly said, then, you know, you're presuming she's already sorted her work visa, because you can't go to France and set up a business unless you have a working visa, but that's a whole different question.
Yeah, unless she's a European citizen, you know, she's a passport.
Sorry, yes, yeah.
But again, not quite so straightforward, so please don't go into it unless you get the right advice. Do that from myself or somebody else that you know in the business.
Yeah. So Jonathan, We've got a currency question here, and it's how does Lumon know the best time to trade my pounds into euros? So do you secretly have a crystal ball there?
I wish I did. It'd be extremely useful in this job and in life in general. No, unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball, and so no, does anyone else on the planet? So ultimately, no one knows exactly what the rates are going to do, and that's not, I don't not know just because I'm not clever enough. And there's someone out there who does know. Some people seem to think there's, some sort of secret answer to the currency markets. There really isn't. The exchange rate movements are just a reaction to what is happening in the world. So of course, every day there's news coming out, politics, economics, all sorts of things going on, data, central banks, the Bank of England, European banks, the US Federal Reserve, and all of these different actors, if you like, are affecting attitudes to the currency market. So that's the fundamental point. No one knows precisely what's going to happen, but that doesn't mean you should just bury your head in the sand, because ultimately you're going to have to make a decision on currency if you're an overseas buyer and you're buying a property in France. So how does Lumen help you in this situation? Well, as part of the consultation I mentioned earlier, we can share with you some very detailed research. We look at forecasts from about 50 different banks. So despite no one ultimately knowing exactly what's going to happen, there's a huge amount of resource dedicated to trying to predict what might happen in the future. So all of the big names in banking out there will have their own research teams, and they all produce information, and we can share that with you. And what it actually allows us to do is get an average of where the market, the forecasts, think things might be headed. So give you a snapshot. If you look at pound euro levels, there is a slight dip predicted, perhaps before maybe a slight stabilization for the pound. If you look at the dollar, there are a few forecasts that the US dollar is going to get weaker later on this year. And a lot of these forecasts come down to interest rates. Interest rates are actually one of the biggest factors in the currency market, affecting attitudes towards the different currencies. As a central bank raises interest rates, it can make that currency more attractive and stronger. If they're expected to cut interest rates, for example, the Bank of England's predicted to do a few interest rate cuts this year, that's the type of activity that can weaken the currency market. So what we can do is just help to explain some of the different options available. I talked about the forward contract earlier, the wallet, and then we'll look at what's going on in the market. But ultimately, it's up to you when you buy your currency. Everyone's slightly different. You might be on a really tight budget. You can't afford any dip in the rate, so you can lock something in really early on, so you know exactly where you are and there's no risk. Or you might have a bit more money to play with, and you might be prepared to take the risk of the rates dropping in the hope that it does go up. And then we can do all sorts of clever things like target particular rates and update you when data comes out. So unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball, but I've got a lot of experience, my team as well. Some of our traders have been here for 20 years, so we can talk through everything going on in the market and just work out what's going to suit you best.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. Another insurance question for Paulette, this time relating to healthcare. Shannon Wheeler wants to know, how do mutuals work?
Okay, so again, another subject that I could take an hour to talk about, but I'll condense it. So the best way to think of a mutual is once you're in France and you've got your social security number, the best thing to call the policy is a mutual top-up policy. And it's called a top-up policy because it tops up what social security are going to refund. There are other exceptions like dental and optical and things like that, but generally it will top up what's already been refunded by social security. So for example, if you go to see a doctor, the doctor that you're registered with, you're going to pay €30 for that appointment. You're going to get back €21, 70% of that from social security. Your mutual will top up that refund, the difference, and pay the extra €9 minus a €2 contribution. But again, that's for another, to explain that a different time. But basically, your mutual is going to top up the refund. Now, not all doctors are going to charge the €30. There's different sectors of doctors. There's 3 sectors, and within sector 2 there's 2 different types. So sector 1 is where they're going to charge what kind of Social Security have said the cost of this treatment should be. Say, for example, you went to see a gynecologist or a dermatologist. Doctors like that are going to quite often charge more than €30 for that consultation. So if you go to see, say, a dermatologist, that charges you €80. If you've got 100% mutual top-up, it's not going to cover €80 because the refund from the state is only €21. So you're going to need a percentage of a mutual top-up that's a lot bigger to cover that extra, the amount that you've paid. So you can have a mutual that starts at hospital only. Some people will say to us, I'm never ill. But if you go into hospital, yes, the cost of, the staying in the hospital, pay for your hospital bed, for the surgeon, for the anaesthetist, things like that, that can really, really mount up, especially if you're in hospital for quite a few days. So some clients want to start a hospital only. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, because then if you're going to have outpatient appointments afterwards and things like that, it can mount up. You can then have eco, so it's only covering kind of some of the costs, the 100%. I would say between 100% and 125% are most, they give a good level of cover, but also a little bit easier on the pocket. You can go right up to 200%, 300%, 400%. Are you going to get your money back for a 400% policy? Not unless you were very, very ill. And if you were that ill, you'd probably have what's called as like a long-term illness that would be classed as some percent, where the state, say, a heart condition, diabetes, things like that. That all the treatment for that is covered by the state anyway. So think of it as a top-up, and it's very important to speak to your insurer to say, right, I wear glasses. Or my children are going to have braces, or to tell us what the level of cover you need is, and we'll then give you, we tend to give 3 quotes to give you kind of a spread. So that's going to be within your budget, that one's going to give you a bit more cover, and that one's going to be less cover but well within your budget. So talk to your insurer, get a cover that suits your pocket and suits your needs, and hopefully somewhere between the two. So if you wanted to cover everything, absolutely everything, you're probably not going to say you couldn't afford it, you wouldn't want to afford it. I don't know. Anyway, somewhere in the middle is a good compromise.
Thanks, Paulette, some good advice there. So I've got another buying question here for Joanna. Tim Dodson says that cash buyers in the USA typically get 25 to 33% discount for a cash purchase. Does the same apply in France?
No. You can obviously, a vendor is more likely to take the offer if you're a cash buyer, and you can put you can put offers in even if you're not a cash buyer. But saying that, yeah, there's no sort of percentage. Some of them, particularly with the French, because I've said this in webinars before. If a French person has renovated their house and they've spent a lot of money on it, and you go in with a 30 or 28% off the asking price, they could be quite insulted and won't sell it to you even if you come up. So you have to be very careful with the French. They're very proud, and they won't accept that. We usually will advise, we will say to you as an agent, have a look at these other properties, very similar, much lower price, or blah, blah, blah. We've said to the vendor that we think it's worth this amount. He wants to put it on at that amount. So we will advise you that if we think it's, it should be more realistic to come down. And we'll also know this is the good thing when using an agent, we'll also know the seller's circumstances. They might be in a real mad rush and have said to us, we don't want to put it on the website that we'll take 20% off, but we will. So we will know these type of things, and we can advise you that yes, your offer probably will be accepted because they've already told us that they're happy to drop to that sort of price. Cash is always the favourite. So, if you're in a cash position and there's 2 of you, one's got to get a mortgage approved and one's got the cash is always going to be the one that people generally will go for because it's a secure buy. But as for discounts, everything is negotiable. It's a different kind of system in France. The mandated price, the full asking price, you can't go over that. So, in other countries, it might be offers, in the region of or over 350,000, say, but in France, if it's 350,000 and you offer that, the vendor has to accept that. You can't go over, but you can, of course, put offers in, and everybody does, but just be careful. We see these TV programs on, you know, and they're putting in really, so I'm going to put in a cheeky offer, and it's 100,000 under the asking price. That doesn't happen in real life. You know, I would just ask the advice of your agent, have a look at the market, what's selling around you, you know, around in the area, and we can give you advice on what we think will be accepted, but always give it a try.
Yeah, as you say, talk to your agent. You don't want to be making a cheeky offer and offend the seller and then not be able to buy it.
I'll never be able to buy it at all. And that has happened, you know, people get really cross. No, that we don't want to see them ever again. You know, it's all that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Good one to know. Okay, we've still got time for a few more questions. So, Tracy, one for you from Geraldine Glynn, who asks, can Australian passport holders relocate to France?
Well, that's a really easy one to answer and very quick. Yes, absolutely. Come on over. We accept everybody. Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, whatever, you know, whether you've got a British, Australian, American, South African, you know, I've got a Bermudian coming over. I mean, it's just a different visa center. You have to go slightly different process or documents, but no, whatever your passport holder, we can work with you to get you a visa to come over. So absolutely, come on over.
That's good for people of all different nationalities to hear, and we have all people of all different nationalities on these webinars. So, as you say, all welcome.
All welcome, and just slightly different. Some are a little bit more, obviously South African ones are a little bit more complicated, but we have good success rates when they listen to my advice. When I say go in there and do not take no for an answer, because they try and persuade you to get a different visa. So, you know, we work with all different nationalities, thank goodness. I was here before Brexit happened, ladies and gentlemen, so we do have other nationalities that we work with.
Yes. Absolutely. Okay, thanks, Tracy. A quick currency one for Jonathan. We're financing our French property purchase with a mortgage. How can we best make regular transfers from the UK to France to pay the mortgage?
Absolutely, yes. So we've got a number of different ways and means to do that. The first part that comes to mind is what we call a regular payment plan. So you can just set up a standing order, sort of direct debit, direct to Lumon around the time of when your mortgage payment is due, and we'll just automatically convert it. We set everything up in advance, you know, the bank account in France to pay it into, and you just set that up, and then it's running in the background, and you don't really ever have to worry about that again. So, you know, each month around that date, there'll be enough funds cleared in advance to manage it. You can sort of manage it all yourself online, where you can just log in once a month and do the payment yourself. Obviously, you've got to make sure you've got the money there in plenty of time with bank holidays and things like that. You don't obviously ever want to miss one of those mortgage payments. You can also do it over the phone with us. We're very proud that we aren't just pushing people online. You know, there's various ways and means nowadays with online transactions, but there's no human contact. And, you know, whilst that's important maybe on any transaction, for some people, they just like to talk to someone. So we're very happy to do that, to have a bit of a chat about strategy. Some clients might buy a bulk amount of euros to cover, say, 6 months worth or 3 months worth, and then we can just pay it out when it's needed. So there's quite a few different ways to manage that. Yeah, we're very familiar with regular ongoing payments, whether it's for a mortgage, your living costs. Of course, you've got to buy that lovely wine, cheese, your lovely meals. You know, you might have to do some repairs from time to time. Who knows? You're going to need money over there, and we can help with all of that.
That's good to hear. People do worry about how they are going to transfer the money, so it's good to know that it can be straightforward and that you can do it online if you wish, or via a real person on the end of the phone. So one final question I think we've got time for Paulette. Is it easy to get homes insurance for a second home or a holiday home that you only visit at certain times of the year, so you're not there all the time? Does it make a difference?
It makes a slight difference, but only in that you need to let the insurer know that the home is unoccupied for more than 90 days a year. And so there's a clause added to the policy. Just be aware, well, most insurers will probably have a requirement that say between November and April, if you're not at the property, you must turn the water off and drain the systems, or when you're away from the property for more than 24 hours, you must close the shutters, things like that. So just that will vary slightly between all insurers. So just make sure that you read the small print, or if your insurance agent is an English-speaking agency like us, just ask us. You don't need to read through the French contract, you can just ask us. And also, say for example, there's been a massive storm, your property is damaged. Quite often, to declare that the damage to that property, you've got a certain amount of time to declare that, and it also you need normally to get a certificate from the local town hall to say that yes, there's been a storm declared, like a natural disaster declared on this day. Say for example, you've not been at the property for 6 months, and you go and you think, oh goodness me, half the roof's gone. When did that happen? How do you declare it? You don't know when it happened, you don't know what date there was the storm. I very, very much recommend getting to know a neighbour or somebody in the area that you can leave a key with, who can say, hey, there's been a great big storm, do you want me to go and check the property out? You need the data that storm happened, and quite often the certificate from the town hall to say, yes, there was this disaster, not disaster necessarily, but there was a big storm on this day. So just be aware, get to know a neighbour, take them a bottle of wine or something, get to know them. So yeah, otherwise you're covered for exactly the same things. There's no difference.
That's good to know, Paulette, and interesting. A good point about you may have to turn off water or lock your shutters, have your shutters locked, and those things. So make sure you do check those things. So we're coming to the end of this webinar. The next one will be on the 25th of February. You'll receive details by email about how to register for that. And you'll also receive a recording of this webinar, which is really handy if you missed something or if you just want to go over some of the answers, listen to them again. Sorry that we didn't have time to answer all of your questions, but all our panelists' details are on the screen in front of you. So don't hesitate to get in touch with them. They're all happy to help you afterwards. So thank you so much for joining us. I'll just hand over to the panelists to say their farewells. So Joanna?
Yes, and just another little tip on our website where you click on the webinars, we do have all of the previous webinars recordings that you can click on and watch. And I know there's a lot of American clients on tonight. We do have some American specials that we've recorded in the past, so you can click on those as well and have a look at specific American information. Anyone who's in London will all be at the show, all of us, I think, this weekend in London for the French Property Show. So might see you there, and if not, hopefully see you again on another webinar. Bye for now, or in France, of course.
Thanks, Joanna. And Tracy?
Yes, great webinar. Yes, I'll be at the French show with everybody. Really looking forward to that. So come across and see us, have a chat with us. Here you've got the whole panel ready. I was just thinking about, you've got Joe here and a whole team to find you your house. You've got Jonathan to get your policy sorted out. You've got Paul to get all your insurance, and I need to get all your visas, your healthcare, your driving license, your registration, set you up and set you on your way. So what more can you ask for? Reach out to us.
Thanks, Tracy. And Paulette?
Yeah, thanks everybody. So as Tracy said, for us, we can do your insurance from visa right through to owning the property for everything. And look at all of us, we're like a one-stop shop. We've known each other for years, we work really well together. So once you've started the process for buying the property, all of us, we can help you on that journey and make your little dream a reality, like we have done moving to France, and I wouldn't change a thing.
Thank you, Paulette. And Jonathan?
Yes, thank you, Karen, very much for hosting as always. Thank you to the other panelists, and thank you, audience, for joining us and all your questions. Hope everyone's found it useful. So from my point of view, the pound is up against the euro from the lower points of last year, so that's very positive. The dollar's also got some positive moves against the euro, so certainly a strong time from a currency perspective to be buying. looks like there's going to be lots going on in the world this year to affect exchange rates, as there always is. So really important to have those conversations with me, but also the rest of the panelists. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us, and see you next time.
Thanks, Jonathan. And yes, as the other panelists have said, it's the French property exhibition this weekend in London at the Novotel at Hammersmith. We'll all be there along with lots of other people. It's a great exhibition, I would say that, because I'm one of the organisers and have been doing them for over 20 years. Come along to the French Property News stand too, and I'll be doing a seminar, as will other panelists here. So we hope to see you then. Thank you very much for joining us. Hope to see you next time. So just say bye now. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.